Jeremy Duffy, right?
Correct.
Welcome to the podcast, man.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy for you to come on and for giving me the time to really explain something, about yourself. So tell me a little bit about yourself, actually.
Yeah, no worries. I was studying computers for a long time. I really like them, but I've been big into privacy for a long time and always really hated how the government and businesses get in your face, get in your business, etc., which made it kind of ironic that I ended up getting a job offer from the NSA. Always figured that at the very least, if I went to work for him, I might learn more about how to protect myself uh, and so on. So I hoped it would be a good experience. It was definitely different than I expected in a lot of ways, but it was an experience.
So, what was the biggest thing that was something that you did not expect that you actually learned in your experience?
So the number one thing that surprised me about the NSA is the deep level of incompetence that it permeates the entire organization. So when I used to, wear a little tinfoil hat and think they were reading my thoughts and whatever, man, they couldn't even read a newspaper. They are really surprisingly ineffective at what they do.
So that's actually pretty interesting. So, we have a lot of conspiracy theorists in the world, and they like to basically point to the government as these wizards that they literally know everything about you and they know how to control that information. But from what I've actually, came across is that a lot of people, not only in the NSA, but also the Secret Service, people that we look up towards, having control over the government, they pretty much don't know what they're doing, or they're lacking at doing a good job, right?
Well, to be fair, I can only speak for the National Security
Hmm.
Agency. And the biggest thing that people need to understand is the NSA is externally focused. So
Okay.
we're talking about spying on other countries, making sure that we know what's going on with adversaries, with the bad guys. And that includes a lot of defense, making sure that the bad guys, when they're trying to spy on us, they're not
Right.
getting into our networks, they're not destroying our infrastructure, that kind of thing. And it wouldn't be fair to say they're completely incompetent at it. It's just a much higher level than I was expecting. Uh,
Hmm.
I can't think of. There are definitely pockets of the agency that are doing the kind of stuff you see in movies, but those
Right.
pockets are so tiny. I don't think I ever actually ran across any of them in 16 years.
Wow. Okay. So let's basically take it from the top. What were you actually doing in the NSA? What was your role?
Well, so just like any company, you have computers and you have computer support, and you need people to run those. You need to make sure the connections are working smoothly, that the
Hmm.
tools are doing what they're supposed to do, and that sort of thing. So that was primarily what I did in various different roles.
Okay.
For example, I spent some time as a technical security person, which means I read a lot of documentation, made sure that
Mm.
they met the standards they were supposed to on this system, these computers, they were updated properly, that kind of thing. So,
Right.
really boring, all things considered. The most interesting thing I did was called operations security, where we taught military and companies and government agencies how to control their unclassified information so they didn't give
Hmm.
away information they weren't supposed to. That's the most useful thing I learned that I can share with other people. For instance, an example of that would be when you put the big TV in your house and then you go put the box on the curb, and
Yeah.
it's like a giant advertisement that says, I have this nice TV. You don't want to do that, right?
Right.
But people don't think about that. They don't think about how much they advertise and broadcast their information, which can draw
Mm.
risk. So to me, that was the most useful thing I did there. That was not what I spent most of my time doing.
Right.
Most of my time I spent, like if your boat was sinking and you were like spooning it out with like the water a little bit at a time, teaspoon at a time.
Yeah.
That's kind of how most of my career there felt.
So would you say that a lot of their systems are kind of outdated? Is that what is that like a little bit of what causes like an incompetence?
I would say the incompetence is the same as any job you've worked.
Right.
You have arrogant and tone deaf executives. You have
Mm-hmm.
managers who are bullies and fools, and there's no accountability anywhere. The whole
Mm-hmm.
system is based on protecting people above and punching people down. It's an extremely toxic environment. And in a toxic environment where people are more concerned about their
Right.
image than things like efficiency, money, and synergy go out the window. And that's what I wrote my book about. Less the expose of the NSA than this is the wrong way to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these lessons will apply to other organizations as well, which I know now because I've seen it everywhere I've worked since I've left the agency. I mean, you read the stories online of
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorites is on Reddit. They have this malicious compliance subreddit where
Mm-hmm.
the people who actually know what they're doing are shut down by arrogant and foolish managers who run right over them. They say, okay, I'll just step back and let you make the mistakes. And it costs them customers, it costs them massive amounts of money. Maybe they end up in court because they
Right.
weren't listening. They weren't paying attention to the people who knew what they were doing. And that is the one critical failure that I saw in the 16 years that I was there. You have literal world experts, and they're not listening to them at all.
Yeah. So during your time in the NSA, did you ever feel like you were doing something that was wrong that made you
Oh,
feel like
sure.
like sick?
So there were at least a few. I mean, for the most part, you're supposed to report fraud, waste, abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
mismanagement. And I did. In one case, there was a situation where the NSA was making up numbers to Congress, and I reported it, and they blew me off. So there really wasn't anything else I could do. I guarantee you that's not worth going Snowden over. I'm not going to go to the reporters and ruin my life over something as minor as that. But
Yeah.
I did write about it in my book. So when people read that book, then, well, it'll get to the court of public opinion. And hopefully, maybe somebody in Congress will notice and take issue with it and hold them accountable for it.
I mean, when we talk about Congress, we're talking about people that are really behind on the times. They move
Well, they are
so
also very
slow.
tone deaf.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're tone deaf, and it's basically, they just call it what it is. It's an organization that protects the people that you're basically trying to call out.
Yeah. So everything that I saw that was a problem in the NSA
Hmm.
is also exists in the larger government. And the way it works is that the system is designed to protect bullies, abusers, and people who are not doing what they're supposed to do. And it's because the system is designed that way that people become that way. People become the way the system shapes them
Hmm.
to be. So if you build a system where, for example, in Congress, it benefits them to stay in Congress as much as possible, as long as possible,
Right.
and focus on serving corporate interests in order to reach that end goal, then even somebody with incredible principles is going to have those principles tested constantly.
Right.
So I'm not here to tell you that all these incompetent, horrible people at the NSA or in
Hmm.
Congress started that way
Yeah.
or whatever. But it's like, Eric, have you ever flown on an airplane?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go on an airplane on Southwest, they have you line up with these nice numbers and you know your spot. You just line up,
Right.
everybody's chill. On every other airline, it's like the wild, wild west. If you don't kick old ladies and little children out of the way, you may not get on soon enough to be able to take all your carry-on baggage. They'll actually
Hmm.
take it from you. So basically, the system will test your morals constantly. And unless you change the system,
Hmm.
to fix that, to remove the incentive to be awful, nothing will ever
Right.
change.
Did you ever feel like your morals were tested?
No, not my morals, but my what's the word? So early in my career, people told me not to rock the boat, not to
Hmm.
speak up, speak out. You'll get blackballed, you'd get penalized, and so on. And I swore I would never become like them. But in 2013, about then, I was working with a manager that was so awful and horrible that it began to break my spirit. And I actually saw the point where I was tipping over the edge and managed to pull
Mm,
myself back. Like at the last second, I'm like, hold on, wait, I'm becoming exactly what I swore never to be. So, yeah, the abuse definitely broke me down, but I managed to pull out. But that's why so many
right.
other people have just given up. People in the government, they see the waste and the inefficiency, but they feel completely powerless to do anything about it because realistically, they kind of are. I
Hmm.
mean, if you speak out, there are consequences, and unless you're willing to face those consequences, it's just not a smart thing to do.
Yeah, because it's like almost every job. If you work in a toxic workplace, uh, it's going to be mentally exhausting to even go back to work.
Correct.
Did you ever feel like you were just exhausted in the environment that you were in to the point that you just wanted to leave the organization?
Oh yeah, I mean, I always wanted to leave. Uh, from the day I started with the agency, I was looking to leave because I don't know how to say this. It's uninspiring, and the work you do is not important.
Hmm.
I mean, basically, all you're doing is plugging holes in the dam constantly and trying to keep them from sinking faster. I never, ever, except when I worked the OPSEC job, felt I was
Right.
doing something worthwhile.
Mm. So something that I've always wondered is how much information does the NSA actually have on everyone? Because there's a lot of people that go to the extent of trying to secure every little single detail of their life. But how much does the NSA actually know of each individual person, or is it just a gathering of data?
So what I can tell you that's unclassified is that
Hmm.
this came up in courts while I was at the NSA, the spying controversy of, way back. I don't remember exactly which one. Well, the Snowden thing. So that would have been
Hmm.
2013 about.
Hmm.
And the idea was the NSA was just collecting all this data, and then DNI Clapper testified that, oh no, we're not collecting anything. And turned out he was lying. We were. The NSA has huge collections of metadata on people, but apparently it doesn't count according to him because nobody's actually looking at it. It's just in a database. But I mean, anybody can tell you that that means they have it and they can use it and they can abuse it. Personally, I think that's more of a theoretical threat.
Right.
From a privacy and personal security point of view, they should not have that information at all, in my
Hmm.
opinion. But realistically speaking, again, the NSA is not your threat. They're not coming after you unless you're a terrorist or connected to terrorists,
Yeah.
because that's the role of the FBI. However, I can tell you that there is effectively no oversight and compliance in the NSA.
Right.
And I suspect that may be true for others, but I cannot say that with that confidence because my only experiences with the NSA. But what I do know is everything I reported got blown off. It didn't matter how egregious or documented it was. They would just say, I don't see the problem. So, as far as I'm concerned, the NSA has no oversight. So, if somebody were to abuse that data, you would never know.
And is it true that they actually record phone calls? Do they have that ability? And especially without a warrant? Like, how much
I
access do
think
they actually have?
what I can say is that the NSA does not have the legal ability to do that. And as far as their capabilities are concerned, I wouldn't be able to tell you if I
Hmm.
knew. Legally because I'm
Right.
under obligation to, not share certain types of information.
Okay.
But I can say that, from a personal technical standpoint, I don't think that would be possible. So take, for
Mm.
example, the archive.org. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're cool. They're trying to collect
Hmm.
of every version of the internet, but even they can't even begin to do that. They had to do all kinds of things to reduce that amount of data. Um, the
Hmm.
thing is, let's say you were collecting all of this data, you're actually hurting yourself because then how do you search it? How do you make sense of it? The more
Mm.
you have, the harder it is to work with. Think about somebody who is a hoarder and their garage is full of old newspapers and this and that
Right.
and the other thing. And they're like, oh man, I remember this article from the other day. Now, where was it? They could spend years looking for it. But over time, that becomes a much bigger threat because storage becomes cheaper,
Mm.
storage becomes larger, and AI makes it more viable to make those
Right.
connections and do more with it. So, can the agency do it? I have no idea. Couldn't
Hmm.
tell you even if I knew. Could they someday? Possibly.
Hmm.
But I can say that legally, at least as far as the law is concerned now, that's way out of their charter. They are
Right.
externally focused on offense and internally focused only on defense. So those
Hmm.
fears that people have should be directed at the FBI and other similar organizations.
Right. And you're currently under an NDA with the agency.
Sort of. It's called a lifetime obligation. There are three of them.
Okay.
And one of them is that every everything that I publish, for example, I have to submit to them for
Hmm.
review first, which means every time I've written a new version of my book, which I just submitted one last week, my final revision, I hope,
Hmm.
they get to be the first to read it, which is really ironic
Wow.
and kind of funny.
So basically, they're reading the work of you trying to call them out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically telling them how much they suck.
What do you think are their opinions on that?
Well, I mean, the last revision that I threw in, they redacted almost nothing because legally
Hmm.
they can't anyway.
Right.
But they're not happy about it. I mean, when they revoked my clearance, one of
Hmm.
the things that it said in the paperwork is that they considered my book a threat,
Mm.
which is absurd because all I said was that I was, that they're bad leaders and it's a toxic environment. So they're full of crap, of course. But you said it before, in a toxic environment. I mean, you didn't say
Hmm.
this exactly, but I got the impression that you were on the same page that speaking out is toxic to a toxic environment.
Right.
And the people who protect that toxicity will lash out quickly and directly
Hmm.
against people who attempt to expose them. Exposure is their kryptonite.
Yeah, and that's why they say if you want to remove toxicity from a workplace, you literally need to fight everyone because you can't bring in new people. There is a corporate culture there that they will then influence and create and continue that toxic culture, that toxic
The system
corporate
will
culture.
consume them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in order to remove and completely get rid of that toxic culture in a workplace is to literally fire everyone in it could be in a department or it could be in the company, fire all the management. And that is one way that you remove the toxicity because it's true that once workplace becomes toxic, it's really hard to get out of that because there's going to be certain people that are going to protect that toxicity.
Right.
And
Well, I think that there's another way,
mhm,
and that's one of the cruxes of my book is that if you become a culture of listening and collaboration,
yeah,
you can destroy the toxicity permanently. But the
hmm,
key is you would have to have the top leadership that bought into that, built it, and protected it. I'll
hmm,
give you an example. Say you're a manager and you're an asshole.
right,
Like the manager that put me in therapy, the one that almost broke my spirit, my organization boss referred to her as a walking Hallmark card because that's how he saw her.
hmm,
But the thing is, why didn't he know? When there's a yearly evaluation and they're up for promotion or bonus or whatever, why aren't we asked what we think of them? Our
yeah.
opinions should be part of their performance review. Kind of like Rate My Professor. Are you familiar with that website?
Yeah, I actually used it a lot back in college.
There you go. So you know what I'm talking about. There
Hmm.
should be a Rate My Professor for bosses. So nobody gets promoted without the people who work for them getting a say.
Hmm.
and that should be 100% anonymous and protected and not go to that manager. It goes to their rater.
Yeah, I mean, we do have like Glassdoor, but I mean, come on, not a lot of people are checking that as
Well, the key
much.
is it has to be internal to the company. So when I
Mm,
worked for Microsoft, Microsoft is huge.
right.
So Microsoft should have its own system. It doesn't have to be external, right?
Hmm.
In fact, it shouldn't be because people might be, the company will work harder to prevent you from participating in something that's public compared to something they can control.
Right.
Whereas, so if I, for example, were a big manager over a lot of people, I would want to know, how are my people rating this person that works for me? So
Hmm.
I hired this person to manage this department, and everybody hates their stinking guts. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a problem.
Right. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And going back to the so it's not an NDA that you have, but it's you said like
Close enough.
kind of, but it's like an obligation agreement that you won't disclose anything, and that's basically what everyone that works in any of these agencies, like the alphabet agencies, have, right?
I would assume, yeah. Same
S-
three lifetime obligations.
and are those like a list, or are those certain levels of obligations?
They're
Or
general. They're very general. One, we have to protect classified information. So we can't say anything that might be
mhm,
classified. We can't share anything classified. If we find or discover that there's classified information out in the wild, like if you held up a piece of paper, it says, I have this document, I think it might be classified, I would have to
mhm,
report you. I would be required by law to tell the NSA that you have that.
mm,
Um, but the other one is the pre-publication requirement, and I forgot the third, something else about classified, same idea. But it's
mm,
really easy to deal with those, just avoid classified information. When I wrote my book, I wrote it entirely on unclassified topics, their business practices, their leadership problems, their listening issues, their waste issues. None of that is classified.
mm. So, what would the legal ramifications be if you do disclose classified information?
Well, it's kind of up to them, I guess, how far do they want to take it? So, for example, there were cases where people accidentally took classified information home. It's just a piece of paper and they self-reported or maybe they got caught. But, they would determine the facts of the case and react accordingly. For instance, one of the risks that I was always under is that they could come and confiscate all of my computers and electronic devices at any time, really. But I've also talked with former NSA who had that problem, other people that wrote about the agency, not a lot of them, but
Right.
something he wrote they were unhappy with, so they came and they ran some software against his computer and said, "Okay, we're good to go." Anything
Mm,
that referenced that is gone and we're happy, and they never took his stuff at all.
mm.
So, but it's on the table, so it depends on how much they dislike you. So I was always worried because I figured they didn't like me very much based on
Mhm.
they sound how things went.
Yeah, and do you ever feel or have had a feeling that death may be on the table?
You're not the first person to ask me that. In fact, some of my former NSA friends have said the same thing. They've said, you're going to catch a bullet. And I said, nah, they'll never do that. But then again, I never thought they would falsify records to pull my clearance either. And well, here we are.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to have to say that I'm still optimistic that they just don't see the point of going to that degree. And
Hmm.
realistically, they do not have the mechanism.
Hmm.
There are no such things as NSA agents per se. If you see something called an NSA agent,
Right.
then their job is to go investigate people. Maybe they go around and knock on doors and say, "Hey, I'm checking on this person for a national security job. Do you mind answering some questions?" They don't have guns, they don't have cars or helicopters or anything like that. So, they could hack me, I guess, but that would be illegal again because
Right.
their charter is not internal. So,
Mm.
am I worried? I'm not in any realistic way. Was I afraid? Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, I was always worried when I was first writing the book that there would come knocking someday.
So, do you hold any information that could put your life at risk.
No. No, like I said, everything I the classifications of information I have is the
Mm-hmm.
book, which they've seen multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
and also a list of about 1,000 quotes that I collected from other employees
Right.
about how much they suck, which they've also seen.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, they're redacting and they're not allowed to, but I don't have, enough money to hire a lawyer, so there's not much I can do about that.
Yeah.
Uh, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to keep trying.
So when it comes to consumer protections, are they involved in much of that when it comes to, say, like credit card transactions and how people are spending their money?
No, no. That's again at best FBI,
Mm-hmm.
not NSA. The NSA's role for protection is they, for example, might know that some bad country has developed a virus that affects Windows computers, and then they will connect with Microsoft and tell them, "Here's this giant hole. You need to patch this."
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't, then it puts everyone in our country at risk, all the military, the government, the businesses, our infrastructure, everything.
Yeah. And the reason that I ask is because they do have access, or they work to have access to a lot of communication systems. And how do card transactions happen? Through those same channels that they may actually be tapping into, right? Or is it?
Yeah, but the thing is that there's the noise factor again.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, if you're trying to listen to everybody in a room at a
Mm-hmm.
party, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
focus. You got to focus on what's most important to you, right? So, at the very least, how do I say this exactly? So, the NSA at least makes a token effort
Mm-hmm.
of monitoring themselves and reporting themselves when they record bad things. For instance, when they were in front of Congress the last time, they did have a couple instances where some NSA person looked up an old boyfriend or a girlfriend to see if they could find any information, and
Yeah.
those were found and reported and dealt with appropriately, or
Mm-hmm.
so they claim at least.
Yeah, because I've also seen cases of law enforcement officers doing the same thing and using their systems to abuse it for their own personal gain. So it does happen.
Oh, 100%, yeah. But like I said, in theory, the agency is very good about controlling and self-reporting on that. And
Yeah.
I believe that that's true for the most part. But also, I have seen them falsify information a couple of times now, and there hasn't been any accountability for that. So, I don't know.
Mm, yeah. And something like that Edward Snowden did, are there actors, or I don't know whether to consider them bad actors because they did break the internal rules that the agency has, but they did it for the greater good of the people. Are there others that are not as known as Snowden that had like a huge impact within the agency?
Well, everybody who leaks information has a big impact in the agency in the sense that, there's a lot of duck and cover, and then there's a lot of emails that go out and they talk about the situation. They remind us, don't talk to the press, redirect any requests for information to the public affairs office and this and that, like Reality Winner, and I can't remember the other one's name, but how do you forget somebody whose name is Reality Winner? Um,
That's their actual name?
but yeah, her name was Reality Winner.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, you can
Wow.
look her up. She's one of the NSA leakers, and there were others. But the problem with leakers is they tend to be really careless
Mm.
about what they leak. It was my biggest problem with Snowden, and I do want to say that I have never heard Snowden say anything publicly that I disagreed with.
Hmm.
Because when he talks about privacy and security and government overreach, everything he's ever said that I've heard, 100% agree with. But when it comes to the NSA perspective, the types and amount of information that he took
Yeah.
and leaked was reckless. Because
Hmm.
what happens is people will literally die. I mean, national security
Right.
is not a joke. It's one of the reasons I got so incredibly furious with how they handled Trump and just let him get away with the kind of bullshit that would put us in prison for, the rest of our lives and beyond. Um, so, but realistically, yeah, I would say that Snowden and the other leakers,
Hmm.
he wasn't wrong with his idea because exposing the program at that time that he was focusing on did lead to a national conversation about what the NSA should and shouldn't do. Obama,
Yeah.
I believe, at the time was the president, and he said, yeah, this is a good conversation to have. So that at least, I would say he might have been able to get a pardon or a better shot at it if that was all he had leaked. But
Hmm.
it was kind of helter-skelter all over the place. He was leaking things like rosters of employees and lists of various programs and what they did. It was
Hmm.
for a long time it felt to me like he might have been an asset of some kind, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's the case. After looking into it, I read his book. I think he just took what he could and hoped that other people would be able to make more sense of it than he could. Because again, it was a lot of data.
Right. So it seems that there are many more people that want to do or just feel that they would want to leak information, because for the most part a lot of employees of the agency are disgusted with how things are ran, or at least people that that are working at the bottom, not like the actual people that control the agency, right?
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, because there were a lot of people that were afraid to say anything positive
Hmm.
about Snowden, for example, or negative about what the agency is doing because of the consequences. So
Hmm.
no matter how they feel, unless they're prepared to lose their job and possibly face jail, they're not going to do anything about it. A lot of them won't even report it through official channels because
Hmm.
they just know there's no point at all.
No,
So
yeah.
it's more apathy, angry apathy than anything.
Hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to personal behavior, how did the NSA change your perspective on how you communicate, or because it had to do something at that level, right?
Uh, I think that when it comes to security,
Hmm.
it's too hard.
Yeah.
There are only two things you can really do to protect yourself, and that is broad strokes technical security,
Hmm.
like when you have a home router and home router has a guest network and a regular network,
Right.
make sure that all of your home devices like Google and your Amazon Alexa and your thermometers and literally any device in your house that
Hmm.
doesn't need to connect to your computer is on the guest network. Only your computer should be on the main network. It's
Uh,
it's not strong enough to prevent the FBI from coming after you, but
hmm.
that leads to the second point. Don't be a target. Don't draw so much attention to yourself that people with, lots of power and ability care about you, right? Don't become a
Hmm.
target. These are the two ways to defend yourself.
Wow. Uh, how common is that your entire house could be hacked, and why is there a difference between the main network and the guest network?
Well, the router has a software separation inside between the guest network and the main
Okay.
network. For example, when I went to college and you plug into the network at the college, they hadn't set up any kind of security, so everyone on the network was connected to everyone else on the network.
Mm.
Which means if when you plugged in, you said, "Oh, this is my home network," then anybody who else was on the network could see your files automatically. Whereas if it's on the guest network, anybody like you could come on into my house and say, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi?" And I can give you the guest network password and you'll have no access to my stuff. Maybe if you ran enough hacks against me, but
Hmm.
what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
They're just vanishingly low. So it's a very simple way to protect yourself against, say, the Amazon Echo, where the I'm not saying this with knowledge. I'm saying this with educated guess
Right.
that the Amazon products are doing everything they can to scope out your network and your devices and learn everything they can about you. Your spying risk is a billion times higher from companies like Amazon or just
Mm.
random hackers online than places like the NSA.
Mm.
That is a fact. So
Yeah.
when I teach people about these simple tricks you can use to protect yourself, it's against everyone,
Right.
but not against the FBI because if they want you, man, they're going to come after you, right? But
Yeah.
people like to say that all the time, like, well, if they want you bad enough, but that's not true because most people don't want you bad enough. If I
Mm.
walk into somebody's house and I connect to their guest Wi or their Wi-Fi and I see that their computer is available, maybe I might be curious to see what's on it, you know? I didn't want them that bad. They just made it so stinking easy,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So put up a little bit of barriers, a little bit of defense, but broad strokes is good enough. For example, uh, generally speaking, I would say that technical people would agree that
Mm-hmm.
for a Windows computer, keep your system up to date, run Windows built-in antivirus,
Mm-hmm.
and then don't click on stupid things. And that's enough to protect you in most cases.
Right. And what about VPNs?
With VPNs, I do agree with, if only for privacy.
Mm.
Because this isn't very much of a security thing. It's more about privacy than anything. And the way you use a VPN is, oh man, how do I say this? Well, when you don't want to be asked about why you went somewhere, you
Yeah.
use a VPN. For example, I looked up when I built my last briefing, I looked up a lot of Nazi stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to talk about the Nazi swastika and the Buddhist swastika in my briefing. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily something I wanted to answer for or taint my Google records with. So,
Right.
you've got to think about where are you searching and who's watching you. And VPN comes in handy there. So does using other search engines like DuckDuckGo or Brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I personally like using Brave. I like the
I like
browser.
Brave. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good browser, and I've been using it for a couple years, and it's been good.
It's got a lot of the important protections built in. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
would agree. And that's another example of the kind of broad strokes security that helps people out. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I talk about more detailed security, first of all, I'm not an expert in that. Even I
Mm-hmm.
find that tedious. So I don't do
Mm-hmm.
it. What I do is I try to find the best, broadest strokes I can and then teach that
Yeah.
to other people. Like when I talk to my parents, how do you know if a phone call is legit or not? It's easy. Always assume they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
Always. When you hear me on the phone, don't assume it's me. Let's have a challenge question. Here's a code word. Ask me something only I would know because especially now with AI, you don't know. You
Mm-hmm.
have to keep it as simple as possible because people got better things to do with their lives.
Oh yeah, and AI is definitely changing everything.
It definitely is, yes.
Yeah, but AI is going to be interesting in the coming years because right now it's only been around for about 2 years, 3 years,
Yeah,
I'd say.
it's very, very young, and yet look how far it's come.
Yeah, it's literally changed everything. I mean, anywhere from like colleges trying to prevent students using AI to entertainment and like now with the news, it could literally transform everything for the worse. And I don't know uh, what's really gonna happen because it's very, very in its early stages.
This is a classification of technology that I would consider to be something we have to find a way to live with.
Hmm. I
I don't think
agree.
AI is going to go away. I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
So instead, we need to channel and control it, put
Hmm.
the right laws in place, put the right controls in place, design the system so that it penalizes bad uses,
Right.
detects and penalizes. That's the key.
Yeah, and I mean now you're asking a lot from Congress because we know that Congress moves way slower than technology does.
Well, it might help if we change Congress a little faster. Like
Yeah.
term limits would do amazing things for Congress because the vast majority of the rot in Congress comes from sitting there too long.
Yeah. And it's just like staying at the company that you work for too long. You start getting
That can
complacent.
be a good thing. It depends. It's definitely good for the company, and
Oh yeah.
if the company is treating you well, it can be good for you as well. But I mean, when it comes to the employment and the landscape of the workforces, the most important thing for health of us and the
Yeah.
world are unions.
Oh yeah.
Unions or something like that. I mean, I don't want people, the anti-union people to jump down my throat. Like, oh, unions have problems. Yeah, they do, but I'm pretty sure they're not as bad as what we have now.
Yeah, I know. We don't have a perfect system, but it's trying to find the middle ground that we really need to look for. And I mean, there may be certain bad things with unions. There may be certain good things with unions. It's like, so what are all the good things all around?
All I
And
know is having no representation is a bad thing. So right now,
yeah,
there's literally nobody that protects the employee.
right. It's like you wouldn't show up to court without an attorney, right?
Right.
Same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But this has been a really interesting conversation. And I hope to stay in touch and continue the conversation because there are a lot of things that we could get really deep into. And
Absolutely.
yes, but thank you for coming on, and we'll go ahead and stay in touch.
Roger that. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.